अष्टोत्तरशतश्मार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तरशतश्मार भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई की जय। नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तरशतश्मार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोक्षरस बाबाजी महाराज की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबाजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपनु गौड़ीय गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पतदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गोपाल शारद वृंद की जय। नाम जय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री वामन-देव की जय। श्री बलि महाराज की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्-भागवतम की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्-भक्ति-वेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने। नमो पदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति-वेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया धिनेदुस्तं सार्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरये। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृदं। नष्टप्रायेष्वद्रेषु नित्यं भगवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणान्तिकं। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामारङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं। भज श्रीकृष्णचैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So Vāmanadeva entered Bali Mahāraja's sacral arena, and when he arrived there, his effulgence robbed the splendor of everyone in the sacrificial arena. And then the priests welcomed him, and then Bali Mahārāja welcomed Vāmanadeva. He washed his feet. He felt himself fortunate to receive him and requested him to take from him. He requested Vāmanadeva to take from him anything he wants. Then Vāmanadeva praised Bali's words, his superiors, his dynasty, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Virochana, and then Bali himself. He said, one has to take charity according to one's needs. Then he asked Bali Mahārāja for 3 paces of land. Considering Vāmanadeva less intelligent, Bali Mahārāja told him to take more without hesitation, as much as he needs to maintain himself so that he'd never have to ask anybody else for anything ever again. And then Vāmanadeva spoke on the principles of satisfaction. He said, a person with uncontrolled senses and greed cannot be satisfied even after attaining everything in the world. One who is satisfied with whatever comes of its own accord is fit for liberation. Then Śukrācārya, he advises Bali Mahārāja. Śukrācārya gives 9 reasons to not give charity to Vāmanadeva. What were those 9 reasons? We read them yesterday. One second. It's 30 to 43. Vaman's identity, this is Krishna's self, and his purpose is to fulfill the interests of the demigods. This will harm the demigods. Hari will usurp everything. And then how will you live? You can't even fulfill your promise. He's going to take the first, he already knew everything that was going to happen. Occupy the 3 worlds with his first step, and then outer space with his second step. And then what will you cater him for this 3rd step? And then you're going to get a hellish destination, and livelihood is more important than charity. How should one give charity? One should divide one's wealth in 5 parts: for religion, reputation, opulence, sense gratification, and family maintenance. Take back your promise. You need to maintain your body even if by untruth. Of truth, the good qualities of a lie. When can one lie? And he explained, in flattering a woman, in joking, in marriage, in earning livelihood, in life danger, in protecting cows in Brahminical culture, and in protecting a family from an enemy's hands. Protecting a person from an enemy's hands. Then Bali Mahārāja disobeys Śukrācārya. Bali Mahārāja then gives 9 reasons to give charity to Vāmanadeva, completely defying his guru. So we read the first 4 reasons. So despite Śukrācārya's advice and despite knowing that Lord Vāman was Lord Vishnu who came to cheat him, Bali Mahārāja prepares to give everything to the Lord in charity. Bali Mahārāja remained silent for some time upon hearing Śukrācārya's advice, and then replied with full deliberation. Bali told Śukrācārya, "What you have spoken is true. Dharma of a householder does not hinder his economic development, his calm, his sense gratification, his yash, his fame, and vritti, means of livelihood." There's a note here. Śukrācārya, being a person of this material world, did not know the principles of a devotee. A devotee is determined to serve the Supreme Lord to his full satisfaction, to the Lord's full satisfaction. Anything that hampers such determination should certainly be rejected. Bali had the opportunity to offer everything to Lord Vāmanadeva, but Śukrācārya was putting forward material arguments to hamper this process of bhakti. After deliberating, Bali decided Lord Vishnu should be pleased in all circumstances, even at the risk of ignoring the Guru's advice. Bali discerned that if his guru advised something against the desire of the Supreme Lord, then there would be no fault in his disobeying those. One will obstruct dharma by disobeying the guru, but one will obstruct bhakti by disobeying the Supreme Lord. Then Bali gave the following reasons for rejecting Śukrācārya's advice. 1. Glory of Prahlad. I am the grandson of Bali Mahārāja. My nature is to be favorable to the Lord. How can I withdraw my promise? Wait, I just need to see where we are today. Okay, yeah, I'm right. Okay, so I am the grandson of Bali Mahārāja. Thus my nature is to be favorable to the Lord. How can I withdraw my promise out of greed for money and cheat a Brahman? And then there's a note here. Bali Mahārāja was a Kripa Siddha. He received the mercy of Prahlad, a pure devotee, who planted the seed of bhakti in his heart. When that seed, he achieved the ultimate fruit, namely love of Godhead, prem, immediately at the appearance of Vāmanadeva. Bali spontaneously decided, I shall give this dwarf whatever he asks. This is a sign of love. So then the second reason Bali Mahārāja gave is the sin of a lie. There's nothing more sinful than untruthfulness. Mother Earth once said, I can bear any heavy thing except the burden of the most heinous liar. Heinous liar, right? And third reason, fear of cheating a Brahman. I do not fear hell, poverty, an ocean of distress, falling from position, or even death, as much as I fear cheating a Brahman. Then the fourth reason, everything is temporary. Wealth is anyways separated at death. Why not please a Brahman with those gifts that I anyway lose at death? Here, Bali Mahārāja addresses the Lord as a Vipra in order to hide his bhav for the Lord. The word Vipra means Brahman, and at the same time, it means confidential. Bali Mahārāja, a pure devotee, had confidentially decided to offer everything to Lord Vāmanadeva without discussion. But because such a decision would hurt the hearts of the demons and his guru, Śukrācārya, Bali spoke equivocally. Now, Śukrācārya might have asked Bali, you want to give everything to this Brahman? Are there any previous instances of people in the history who have done something like this? And so now Bali Mahārāja is going to give some historic examples, and then he's going to finish off the last 5 reasons why he's doing this. What verse we're on? 6, I think, right? Or 7. Oh, and I didn't see everybody who's here. 1 second. Let me just... Dandavat pranams Gargaraji, Haripriya Didi, Manjari Didi, Raseshwari Mataji, Ganga Didi, Indira Mataji, and Rukmini Didi. Dandavat pranams, everybody. Okay, so let's read the 5 other reasons. Okay. Shreya kurvanti bhutanam sadhava dushjaja subhi dadyam shibi prabhritaya ko vikalpo dharadishu. So here's some examples of people who've done like this before. Dadichi, Shibi, and many other great personalities will sacrifice even their lives for the benefit of the people in general. This is the evidence of history. So why not give up this insignificant land? What is the serious consideration against this? Against it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Bali Mahārāja was prepared to give everything to Lord Vishnu, and Śukrācārya, being a professional priest, might have been anxiously waiting, doubting whether there had been any such instance in history in which one had given everything in charity. Bali Mahārāja, however, cited the tangible examples of Maharaj Shibi and Maharaj Dadichi, who had given up their lives for the benefit of the general public. Certainly one has attachment for everything material, especially one's land, but land and other possessions are forcibly taken away at the time of death, stated in Bhagavad Gita, Mrityu Sarva Harashchaham. The Lord personally appeared to Bali Mahārāja to take away everything he had, and thus he was so that he could see the Lord face to face. Non-devotees, however, cannot see the Lord face to face. To such persons, the Lord appears as death and takes away all their possessions by force. Under the circumstances, should we not part with our possessions and deliver them to Lord Vishnu for his satisfaction? Sri Chanakya Pandit says in this regard, Sannimitte varam tyago vinashe niyate sati. That's Chanakya Shloka 36. Since our money and possessions do not last, but will somehow or other be taken away, as long as they are in our possession, it is better to use them for charity to a noble cause. Therefore, Bali Mahārāja defied the order of his so-called spiritual master. Yar iyam bubhuje brahman daitendrar anivartibihi tesham kalo grasil lokan na yashodhikatam bhuvi. O best of the Brahmins, certainly the great demoniac kings who were never reluctant to fight enjoyed this world. But in due course of time, everything they had was taken away, except their reputation by which they continued to exist. In other words, one should try to achieve a good reputation instead of anything else. Purport. In this regard, Chanakya Pandit, Shloka 34, also says, Ayusha kshana ekopi na labhya svarnalkoti bhi. The duration of one's life is extremely short, but if in that short lifetime one can do something that enhances his good reputation, that may continue to exist for many millions of years. Bali Mahārāja therefore decided not to follow his spiritual master's instructions that he deny his promise to Vāmanadeva. Instead, he decided to give the land according to the promise and be everlastingly celebrated as one of the 12 Mahajans. Balir Vayasakir Vayam. Sulabha yudivi prarshe hyani vrittastanu tyaja na tata tirta ayate shraddhaya ye dhana tyajaha. O best of the Brahmins, many men have laid down their lives on the battlefield, being unafraid of fighting. But rarely has one gotten the chance to give his accumulated wealth faithfully to a saintly person who creates holy places. Purport. Many Kshatriyas have laid down their lives on the battlefield for their nations, but hardly a person can be found who has given up all his property and has accumulated in charity to a person worthy of the gift. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:20, Datavyam iti yadhanam diyate nukarine deshe kale chapatrecha tadhanam satvikam smritam. That gift which is given out of due proper time and place to a worthy person and without expectation of return is considered to be charity in the mode of goodness. Bhagavad Gita 17:20. Thus, charity given in the proper place is called sattvika. And above this charity and goodness is transcendental charity, in which everything is sacrificed for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vāmanadeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had come to Bali Mahārāja for alms. How could one get such an opportunity to give charity? Therefore, Bali Mahārāja decided without hesitation to give the Lord whatever he wanted. One may get various opportunities to lay down his life on the battlefield, but such an opportunity as this is hardly ever obtained. Manasvina karunikasya shobhanam yadartikamo panayena durgati kuta punar brahma vidam pavadrisham tato vator asya dadami vanchitam. By giving charity, a benevolent and merciful person undoubtedly becomes even more auspicious, especially when he gives charity to a person like your good self. Under the circumstances, I must give this little brahmachari whatever charity he wants from me. Purport. If one accepts a poverty-stricken position because of losing money in business, gambling, prostitution, or intoxication, no one will praise him. But if one becomes poverty-stricken by giving all of his possessions in charity, he becomes adored all over the world. Aside from this, if a benevolent and merciful person exhibits his pride in becoming poverty-stricken by giving his possessions in charity for good causes, his poverty is welcome and an auspicious sign of a great personality. His poverty is a welcome and auspicious sign of a great personality. Bali Mahārāja decided that even though he had become poverty-stricken by giving everything to Vāmanadeva, this is what he would prefer. Yajanti yagyam kratubhir yamadrita bhavanta amnaya vidhanako vidha sa eva vishnur varadostuna vaparo tasyam yanushmai kshitimipsitam mune. O great sage, great saintly persons like you, being completely aware of the Vedic principles for performing ritualistic ceremonies and yagyas, worship Lord Vishnu in all circumstances. Therefore, whether that same Lord Vishnu has come here to give me all benedictions or to punish me as an enemy, I must carry out his order and give him the requested tract of land without hesitation. Purport. As stated by Lord Shiva, Radhananam sarvesham Vishnur aradhanam param tasmat paraktarang devi tadiyanam samarchanam. Although in the Vedas there are recommendations for worshipping many demigods, Lord Vishnu is the supreme person, and worship of Vishnu is the ultimate goal of life. The Vedic principles of the Varnashram institution are meant to organize society to prepare everyone to worship Lord Vishnu. Varnashramacharvata purushena parapuman Vishnur aradate panta toshakaranam. Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, is worshipped by the proper execution of prescribed duties in the system of Varna and Ashram. There is no other way to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's from Vishnu Puran 3.8.9. One must ultimately worship Lord Vishnu, and for that purpose, the Varnashram system organizes society into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, Brahmacharis, Grahastas, Vanaprastas, and Sannyasis. Bali Mahārāja, having been perfectly educated in devotional service by his grandfather Prahlāda Mahārāja, knew how things are to be done. He was never to be misguided by anyone, even by a person who happened to be his so-called spiritual master. This is a sign of full surrender. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said, Marobi Rakobi Jo Icha Tohara Nitya Dasa Prati Tua Adhikara. When one surrenders to Lord Vishnu, one must be prepared to abide by his orders in all circumstances, whether he kills one or gives one protection. Lord Vishnu must be worshipped in all circumstances. Whether he kills one means, whether the Lord wants me to die or wants me to live. Yeah. Once kills me or saves me. In all circumstances, I'll save. Worship Lord. Yadyapasavadharmena mang badhniyad anagasam tatapyenam nahingshis sishe bhitam brahmatanum ripum. Although he is Vishnu himself, out of fear, he has covered himself in the form of a Brahman to come to me begging. Under the circumstances, because he has assumed the form of a Brahman, even if he irreligiously arrests me or even kills me, I shall not retaliate, although he is my enemy. Purport. If Lord Vishnu, as he had come to Bali Mahārāja and asked him to do something, Bali Mahārāja certainly would have not refused his request. But to enjoy a little humor between himself and his devotee, the Lord covered himself as a Brahman brahmachari, and thus came to Bali Mahārāja to beg for only 3 feet of land. Eshava uttama shloko na jihasati yadyasha hatva mainam haredyudhe shayita nihato maya. If this Brahman really is Lord Vishnu, who is worshipped by Vedic hymns, he would never give up his widespread reputation. Either he would lie down having been killed by me, or he would kill me in a fight. Purport. Bali Mahāraja's statement that Vishnu would lie down having been killed is not the direct meaning, for Vishnu cannot be killed by anyone. He can kill everyone, but he cannot be killed. Thus, the real meaning of the words lie down is that Lord Vishnu would reside within the core of Bali Mahāraja's heart. Lord Vishnu is defeated by a devotee through devotional service. In other words, no one can defeat Lord Vishnu. Otherwise, no one can defeat Lord Vishnu. So in other words, defeat him. So either he would be defeated by coming under my, coming into my heart. Okay. Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Ashraditang Shishyam Anadesha Karanguru Shashapa Daiva Prahita Satyasandham Manasvinam. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued. Thereafter, the spiritual master Śukrācārya, being inspired by the Supreme Lord, cursed his exalted disciple Bali Mahārāja, who is so magnanimous and fixed in truthfulness that instead of respecting his spiritual master's instructions, he wanted to disobey his order. Purport. The difference between the behavior of Bali Mahārāja and that of his spiritual master Śukrācārya was that Bali Mahārāja had already developed the love of Godhead, whereas Śukrācārya, being merely a priest of routine rituals, had not. Thus, Śukrācārya was never inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to develop in devotional service, as stated by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatang pritipurvakam dadhami buddhiyogam tam yemam upayanti te. Those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Devotees who actually engage in devotional service and love are inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vaishnavas are never concerned with ritualistic smartha brahmans. Srila Sanatana Goswami has therefore compiled Hari Bhakti Vilas to guide the Vaishnavas who never follow the smartha vidhi. Although the Supreme Lord is situated in the core of everyone's heart, unless one is a Vaishnav, unless one is engaged in devotional service, one does not get sound advice by which to return home back to Godhead. Such instructions are meant only for devotees. Therefore, in this verse, the word Daiva Prahita, being inspired by the Supreme Lord, is important. Śukrācārya should have encouraged Bali Mahārāja to give everything to Lord Vishnu. This would have been a sign of love for the Supreme Lord. But he did not do so. On the contrary, he wanted to punish his devoted disciple by cursing him. Dridam pandita manyagya stabdasmad upekshaya machasangnatigo yastvam achirad prashyase shriya. Although you have no knowledge, you have become a so-called learned person, and therefore you dare to be so impudent as to disobey my order. Because of disobeying me, you shall very soon be bereft of all your opulence. That kind of works with Bali Mahāraja's original plan, doesn't it? Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Bali Mahārāja was not Pandit Mani, or one who falsely assumes himself learned. Rather, he was Pandita Manyagya, one who is so learned that all other learned persons worship him. I think that's supposed to say and. And because he was so learned, he could disorder of his so-called spiritual master. He had no fear of any condition of material existence. Anyone cared for by Lord Vishnu does not need to care about anyone else. Thus, Bali Mahārāja could never be bereft of all opulences. The opulences offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead are not to be compared to the opulences obtained by Karma Kanda. In other words, if a devotee becomes very opulent, it is to be understood that his opulence is a gift of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such opulence will never be vanquished, whereas the opulence achieved by one's fruit of activity may be vanquished at any moment. Evam Shapta Swaguruna Satyana Chalito Mahan Vamanaya Dadavenam Architvo Dakapurvakam. Shukadeva Goswami continued, even after being cursed in this way by his own master, Bali Mahārāja, being a great personality, never deviated from his determination. Therefore, according to custom, he first offered water to Vāmanadeva, and then offered him the gift of land he had promised. Oh, and I forgot, Indira Mataji, she sent a picture in our Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam group. Let me just find it, our WhatsApp group, for this part. See? So there's Bali Mahārāja, and there's Bali Mahārāja, and then Vāmanadeva and Śukrācārya. Oops, my computer froze. What's going on? Okay. Vindhyavalisthadagatya patni jalakamalini aninye kalasham haimam avane janyapambritam. Bali Mahārāja's wife, known as Vindhyavali, who was decorated with a necklace of pearls, immediately came and had a large golden water pot brought there, full of water with which to worship the Lord by washing his feet. See, there's the golden pot. Yajamana swayam tasya Śrīmad-Pada yugam muda avanijya vahan murdhni tarapo vishvapavani. Mahārāja, the worshipper of Lord Vāmanadeva, jubilantly washed the Lord's lotus feet and then took the head, for that water delivers the entire universe. Tada surendram divi devata gana gandharva vidya dharasiddha charana tat karma sarvepi grananta arjavam prasunna varshar vavrishur mudanvitaha. At that time, the residents of the higher planetary system, namely the demigods, the Gandharvas, the Vidyadharas, the Siddhas, and the Charanas, all being very pleased by Bali Mahārāja's simple, non-duplicious act, praised his qualities and showered upon him millions of flowers. Purport. Arjavan, simplicity or freedom from duplicity. This Arjavan is a qualification of a Brahman and a Vaishnav. A Vaishnava automatically acquires all the qualities of a Brahman. Syasti bhaktir bhagavat kinchana sarvar gunas tatra samasate sura. A Vaishnav should possess the Brahminical qualities such as Satya, Shama, Dhamma, Titiksha, and Arjava. There cannot be any duplicity in the character of a Vaishnav. When Bali Mahārāja acted with unflinching faith and devotion unto the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, this was very much appreciated by all the residents of the higher planetary system. Ne dur muhur dundu bhaya sahasrasho Gandharva kim purusha kinnara jagu manasvinanena kritam suduksharam vedvan adad yad ripave jagat trayam. The Gandharvas, the Kim Purushas, and the Kinnaras sounded thousands and thousands of kettle drums and trumpets again and again, and they sang in great jubilation, declaring, "How exalted a person is Bali Mahārāja, and what a difficult task he has performed." Even though he knew that Lord Vishnu was on the side of his enemies, he nonetheless gave the Lord the entire 3 worlds in charity. This wasn't a very tricky thing that Vāmanadeva is doing, is it? Like, everybody already knew his plan. Tad Vāmanam rupam avardhatadbhutam harer anantasya gunatrayatmakam bhukam dishodyor vivarapayodhayas tiryang nrideva rishayo yadasata. The unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had assumed the form of, then began increasing in size, acting in terms of the energy, until everything in the universe was within his body, including the earth, the planetary systems, the sky, the directions, the various holes in the universe, the seas, the oceans, the birds, beasts, human beings, the demigods, and the great saintly persons. Shri Trivikram Dev Ki Jai. Purport. Bali Mahārāja wanted to give Bali Mahārāja wanted to give charity to Vāmanadeva, but the Lord expanded his body in such a way that he showed Bali Mahārāja that everything in the universe is already in his body. Actually, no one can give anything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he is full in everything. Sometimes we see a devotee offering Ganges water to the Ganges. After taking his bath in the Ganges, a devotee takes a palmful of water and offers it back to the Ganges. Actually, when one takes a palmful of water from the Ganges anything. And similarly, if a devotee offers a palmful of water to the Ganges does not increase in any way. But by such an offering, the devotee becomes celebrated as a devotee of Mother Ganges. Similarly, when we offer anything with devotion and faith, what we offer does not belong to us, nor does it enrich the opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one offers whatever one has in his possession, he becomes a recognized devotee. In this regard, the example is given that when one's face is decorated with a garland and sandalwood pulp, the reflection of one's face in a mirror automatically becomes beautiful. The original source of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is our original source also. Therefore, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is decorated, the devotees and all living entities are decorated automatically. Kaye balistasya mahavibhutehe sahartvigacha sadasya etat tadarsha vishvam trigunang gunatmake bhutendriyartha shayajiva yuktam. Bali Mahārāja, along with all the priests, acharyas, and members of the assembly, observed the Supreme Personality of Godhead's universal body, which was full of 6 opulences. That body contained everything within the universe, including all the gross material elements, the senses, the sense objects, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, the various kinds of living entities, and the actions and reactions of the 3 modes of material nature. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Aham sarvasva prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. Krishna is the origin of everything. Vasudeva saram iti. Krishna is everything. Matstani sarabhutani nateshvavastita. Everything rests in the body of the Lord, yet the Lord is not everywhere. Mayavadi philosophers think that since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, has become everything, he has no existence. Their philosophy is called Advaitavad. Actually, however, their philosophy is not correct. Here, Bali Mahārāja was the seer of the personality of Godhead's universal body, and that body was that which was seen. Thus, there is Dvaitavad. There is always 2 entities, the seer and the seen. The seer is a part of the whole, but he is not equal to the whole. The part of the whole, the seer, is also one of the whole, but since he is but a part, he cannot be the complete whole at any time. This achinta bheda bhed, simultaneously oneness and difference, is the perfect philosophy propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rasam achashtangri tale tapadayor mahing mahindran purushasya janghayo patatrino januni vishvamurter urvor ganam marutam indrasenaha. Thereafter, Bali Mahārāja, who is occupying the seat of King Indra, could see lower planetary systems such as Rasatala on the soles of the He could see the lower planetary systems, such as Rasatala, on the soles of the feet of the Lord's universal form. He saw on the Lord's feet the surface of the globe, on the surface of the globe of his calves all the mountains, on his knees the various birds, and on his thighs the varieties of air. Purport. The universal situation is described herein in regard to the completion of the Lord's gigantic universal form. The study of this universal form begins from the soul. Above the soles are the feet, above the feet are the calves, above the calves are the knees, and above the knees are the thighs. Thus the parts of the universal body, one after another, are described herein. The knees are the place of the birds, and above that are varieties of air. The birds can fly over the mountains, and above the birds are varieties of air. Sandhyam vibhorvasasi goya akshat prajapatin jaghane atma mukyan nabhyam nabha kukshishu sapta sindhun uru kramasyo rasi charkshamalam. Maharaj saw beneath the garments of the Lord, who acts wonderfully, the evening twilight. In the Lord's private parts he saw the Prajapatis, and in the round portion of the waist he saw himself with his confidential associates. In the Lord's navel he saw the sky. On the Lord's waist he saw the 7 oceans, and on the Lord's bosom he saw the clusters of stars. Hridanga dharmastanayor murarer ritam cha satyam cha manasya tendum shriyam cha vakshasya ravindahastam kante cha samani samastarefan indra pradhanan amaran bhujeshu tatkarnayo kakubhodyauscha murdhni kesheshu meghan chavasan nasikayam Akshnoscha suryam vadane cha vahinim vanyam cha chandanksi rase jalesham bruvor nishedhang cha vidhing cha pakshmasu ashcharatrim cha parasya punkso manyam lalate dhara eva lobham sparshe cha kamam nripareta sampaha prishte tadharmang Kramaneshu yagyam chaya sumrityung hasite chamayam tanuruheshvo shadijatayascha nadishcha nadishu shilanakeshu pudav ajam deva ganam rishingscha praneshu gatre stirajagamani jangamani Sarvani bhutan darshavira. My dear king, on the heart of Lord Murari he saw religion, on the chest both pleasing words and truthfulness, and the mind, the moon, on the bosom the goddess of fortune with a lotus flower in her hand, on the neck all the Vedas and all sound vibrations. On the arms, all the demigods headed by King Indra. In both ears, all the directions. On the head, the upper planetary systems. On the hair, the clouds. In the nostrils, the wind. On the eyes, the sun. And in the mouth, fire. From his words came all the Vedic mantras. On his tongue was the demigod of water, Vāmana-deva. On his eyebrows were the regulative principles. And on his eyelids were day and night. When his eyes were open, it was time, and when they were closed, it was night. On his forehead was anger, and on his lips was greed. O king, in his touch were lusty desires, in his semen were all the waters. On his back was irreligion, and in his wonderful activities or steps was the fire of sacrifice. On his shadow was death. In his smile was the illusory energy. and on the hairs of his body were all the drugs and herbs. In his veins were all the rivers, on his nails were all the stones, in his intelligence were Lord Brahma, the demigods, and the great saintly persons, and throughout his entire body and senses were all living entities moving and stationary. Bali Mahārāja thus saw everything in the gigantic body of the Lord. How many? I just want to see how many verses there are in this. Goes up to 34. Okay. Sarvatmanidam bhuvanam nirikshya sarve sura kashmalam apuranga sudarshanam chakram asahyatejo dhanush chashangam stanayit nugosham. The dhanush, the bow named Sharanga. O king, when all the demons, the followers of Maharaj Bali, saw the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who held everything within his body, when they saw on the Lord's hand his disc, known as the Sudarshan Chakra, which generates intolerable heat, and when they heard the sound of his bow, all of these caused lamentation within their hearts. Hey, they didn't give the name named Shanga. Parjanya Ghosho Jalaja Panchajanya Komodaki Vishnu Gadatarasvini Vidyadharosi Shatachandra Yuktas Tunottamav Akshaya Sayakocha. The Lord's conch shell, named Panchajanya, which made sounds like that of a cloud. The very forceful club named Komodaki, the sword named Vidyadhara, with a shield decorated with hundreds of moon-like spots, and also Akshaya Sayaka, the best of quivers. All of these appeared together to offer prayers to the Lord. Even the quiver's name was mentioned, but not the bow. That's pretty cool, though. They're all offering all his weapons are offering him prayers. That's really cool. Sunanda Mukhya Upatasturisham Parshada Mukhya Sahalokapalaha Spurat Kiritangadamina Kundala Srivatsaratnotamame Kalambharai Madhuvrata Sragvanamalaya Vrito Raraja Rajan Bhagavan Urukrama Kshitim Padaikena Baler Vichakrame Nabha Sharirena Dishascha Bahubi. I actually read a fantasy novel by Brandon Sanderson, and the weapons had feelings, could talk. The wielder of the weapon had like a connection with the weapon and could communicate with the weapon, and it's just kind of cool that this isn't just fantasy for us. This is reality. I didn't mean to say for us. I just mean this isn't just fantasy. This is reality. These associates, headed by Sunanda and other chief associates and accompanied by all the predominating deities of the various planets, offered prayers to the Lord, who wore a brilliant helmet, bracelets, and glittering earrings that resembled fish. On the Lord's bosom were the lock of hair called Shrivatsa and the transcendental jewel named Kaustuba. He wore a yellow garment covered by a belt, and he was decorated by a flower garland surrounded by bees. Manifesting himself in this way, O king, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose activities are wonderful, covered the entire surface of the earth with one footstep, the sky with his body, and all directions with his arms. Purport. One might argue, since Bali Mahārāja promised Vāmanadeva only the land occupied by his steps, why did Lord Vāmanadeva occupy the sky also? In this regard, Srila Jiva Goswami says that the steps include everything, downward and upward. When one stands up, he certainly occupies certain parts of the sky and certain portions of the earth below his feet. Thus, there is nothing uncommon for the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he occupied the entire sky with his body. Okay, we're ending with this verse. Padang ditiyam kramatas trivishta navai tritiyaya tadiyam manvapi urukmasyang uparya paryato maharjanabhyam tapasa parangataha. As the Lord took his second step, he covered the heavenly planets, and not even a spot remains for the third step, for the Lord's foot extended higher and higher beyond Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and even Satyaloka. Shri Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. When the Lord's footstep exceeded the height of all the lokas, including Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka, his nails certainly pierced the covering of the universe. The universe is covered by the 5 material elements, Bhumir Apanalo Vayu Kang. As stated in the Shastra, these elements are in layers, each 10 times thicker than the previous one. Nonetheless, the nails of the Lord pierced through all these layers and made a hole penetrating into the spiritual world. From this hole, the water of the Ganges infiltrated into this material world, and therefore it is said, Padanaka nirajanita jana pavan. It's from Dashavatar Stotram, verse 5. Because the Lord kicked a hole in the covering of the universe, the water of the Ganges came into this material world to deliver all the fallen souls. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 8th canto, 20th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Bali Mahārāja Surrenders the Universe. Jai ho, Shri Vāmanadeva ki jai, Shri Trivikramadeva ki jai, Shri Bali Mahārāja ki jai. So next chapter, next chapter. Oy. What's going on here? There. Oh, look at that picture. There's Śukrācārya. All right, so in the next chapter, Bali Mahārāja is arrested by the Lord. So first, everybody worships Lord Vāmanadeva. Various people worship Lord Vāmanadeva's gigantic form, the descent of the Ganga. Vāmanadeva reduces to his original form, and various gods worship him. Then the demons attack Lord Vāman, and Bali stops them. Then the Lord arrests Bali Mahārāja. So that we will read all tomorrow, right? Yep, we do the whole chapter tomorrow. Oh, and we're only like a few days away from finishing the whole 8th canto. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's only like 4 or 5 more days. All right. Jai Shri Radhe, everybody. Oh, wait, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo. Rup Manjari Didi, we'll sing it tomorrow because tomorrow is the day when everybody offers their prayers. So we'll also offer our prayer on that day. And also the next chapter is only 4,762 words. Today, this chapter was 6,038 words. So yeah, it's going to be a short chapter. We'll end super early tomorrow, and then we can read it. Then we can sing it. Normally. That's a good point, Rup Manjari Didi. Jai Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Shri Bhakti Vedanta Vāmana Gosai Maharaj ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj Shri Prabhupada ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki Jai Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupara Shatara Shatashmar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Mahā-Bhagavat Shri Gokshara Babaji Maharaj ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Shri Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai Nitila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Shara Gosai Prabhu ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vraja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund ki Jai Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai Shri Vāmana-deva ki Jai, Shri Trivikram Dev ki Jai, Shri Bali Mahārāja ki Jai, Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Om Vrindaya Tulsi Devaya Priyaya Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavataya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams, everybody. Oh, and Hari Priya Didi, the thing I'm reading from, it's a book compiled by, I think, a devotee named Gauranga Sundar Prabhu, and it's called Bhagavat Subhodhini. Yeah, Bhagavat Subhodhini. I think it's published by Tulsi Books or something like that. Anyways, if you send me a private message, I can send you a link. Jai Shri Vāmanadeva. Hari Bol, Pradyumna Prabhu, Dira Mataji, Rup Manjari Didi, Rukmini Didi. Tanda pranams, everybody. Hari Bol. See you all